So, as Matt said, I'm here to speak to you about personalisation. And before I get started, I always like to start all of these with a story, okay? And this story is a story that my grandparents used to regale to me when I was younger. And it was about the utopia that they used to live in the 30s, 40s and 50s and how much better life was back then, okay? So back then, Doris from number 37 down the road, she'd want to buy her groceries. So when Doris wanted to get her groceries, she'd walk down to the local shop, she'd walk in, she'd be greeted by name. Hello, Doris, as she walks in. How's Ken? Ken's her husband. How are the two kids? And how's your dog, Rupert? Lovely welcome, okay? Making her feel valued as a customer as soon as she walks in. The shopkeeper would ask her about her holiday to Bognor Regis last week, and he would say, do you want the usual? And he'd pack or have pre-packed for her bread, her cheese, her Marmite, whatever it was that she had on a weekly basis. They'd share and exchange friendly gestures. She'd walk out feeling valued, happy, and it'd be an overall very pleasant user experience, customer experience, okay? Compare that to my experience of my weekly grocery shop, where I walk into some huge refrigerated warehouse. I'm greeted by thousands of other people and pretty much every single item that exists on the planet in one tiny place, okay? It's a daunting, stressful experience. I don't know where anything is. There's tons and tons and tons of choice. However, I don't have a damn clue where any of it is, okay? I might only want spinach and some oats or something like that, but finding it or finding someone that can help me is a miserable experience. I'll go through the checkout. I'll sort of be grunted at by the checkout. The car parking experience, normally, if I'm trying to park in the child and parent space, that's normally been taken up by someone that doesn't have kids or does have kids, but they've long since graduated and probably retired themselves. So all in all, the two experiences are very different. And I'm here to explain how we're coming back towards that sort of personalised 1930s, 40s, 50s experience, okay? So I'm Steve Cathcart. As Matt said, I'm currently head of marketing at the student room. I'm not representing the student room today. I also do freelancing activity, freelancing services in personalisation and CRM as well. Not here representing anyone, just talking to you today about the personalising the user experience. I've been in digital marketing for 12 years now, and I've been specialising in personalisation for 7 years, or coming up to 7 years. I moved from TUI, where I grew their CRM program from £100 million annual turnover to £600 million annual turnover within the 6 years that I was with them. And as I say, I've moved on to student room, and I'm going to talk to you about how I did that and some of the tips that you can apply from the basics all the way up into the more advanced stuff. Let's see if we can figure out how to use this pointer. Okay, so personalisation, what is it and how can you roughly break down personalisation into 3 different stages, okay? So you have your mass marketing approach, so that's sort of like your Asda's. That's when we moved away from that personalised, hello Doris, here's your groceries today. We moved to mass marketing, okay, mass advertising, and that's magazines, television, one message to a huge wide audience, the same message to me, to Luke, to every one of you, no matter who we are, what our interests are, what drives us, what motivates us, we all see the same message, okay? Which in some ways is brilliant, but in other ways isn't quite as effective as we could be doing. The next stage is segmented marketing. So it's breaking down that mass market into various different segments, okay? So it's about saying, okay, I recognise that there's different types of people with different types of interests, different types of requirements within this huge mass marketing blob. And it's about recognising that and breaking them down into segments or sub-segments of that mass market, okay? And tailoring the message, your communications to those user groups. And finally, we have the holy grail of personalisation, and that's one-to-one personalised marketing. And the internet is now allowing us to get back to that, to get back to what we were doing in the 30s, 40s, 50s, okay? In that utopia where our grandparents or our parents or our great-grandparents or whoever it was, that utopia that they tell us that they used to live in, okay? We'll be able to have those one-to-one personalised conversations with our customers, okay? So most people are at the mass marketing stage. A lot of people are trying the segmented approach, and the one-to-one personalised messaging is sort of the holy grail of where we need to get to, okay? It's what we should be aiming for, and it's probably something that we'll never fully achieve, but we're constantly evolving, constantly working towards. So, what is it that you want to achieve? Defining your objectives, okay? So, what is it that you want to achieve out of personalisation? Is it increased user engagement? Is it increased revenue? Increased retention? Every single person in this room will have a different or slightly different objective. But you can't embark on that personalisation journey without understanding what you're trying to achieve. Fundamentally, what is it out of personalisation that you want to achieve? Okay, objectives, very, very important. How will you achieve those objectives, and when will you achieve those objectives? Okay, and as I said, personalisation can be very daunting. It's still a relatively new science, and it's constantly evolving, as with pretty much everything digital. It's still new, still evolving. And you can go from very simple basics all the way up to very complex algorithms. So step one, data. Data is at the absolute heartbeat of the personalisation strategy, okay? So that shopkeeper that welcomed Doris, he had that data on her. He knew who she was, who her husband was, her dog's name, her previous order, her common likes and dislikes. He understood Doris and he understood her community, okay? So the big data problem at the minute, I'll whistle through this slide because it's a stats slide. I don't like to spend too much time on those. But 95% of people, 95% of data within organisations remains untapped. You might hear people throwing around buzzwords such as data mining. Essentially what that means is just looking into your data, understanding all that data that you hold in as an organisation and what you can do with it. I'll whistle past that slide because this is far more valuable to you guys, okay? So what data is available to you? Every single one of you sitting in this room, what data do you currently have available to you, okay? It's a question that you should be asking yourself on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. What data do you have available to you, and how can it be segmented? How can you use that data that you have available to you today, how can you use that in your marketing activity? So two examples, at TUI and at the student room. At TUI, we had email engagement data, we had geo data. So email engagement data is how users have been interacting on the web, on their email, what they've been clicking on, for example. Geo data, whereabouts they live in the country. Preference center data, that's, they filled out a form on your website, for example, and said, I'm this age, I live in this place, I'm interested in this university course, or I'd like my child to register at this nursery, whatever it might be, preference center data. We had retail inquiry data, web search data, so that's essentially what the user's been doing on the website, and shortlist data for holidays, okay? Sorry, before I move on, TUI is Thompson and First Choice Holidays for those people that have never been on one of those holidays, okay? And at Student Room, which is an online forum for students, and we offer learning tools as well. We have, again, preference center data. We have DMP data, which is a data management platform. We use Crux. That essentially understands and is constantly looking at what you do across our website and putting you into little segments based on what you're looking at. Email engagement data, again, user data, so what we know about their profiles. So again, when they register, they give us their email address, their age, things like that. Geo data, and again, web engagement data, so what they're posting, how often they post, and things like that, okay? So it's about understanding what data you guys have available to you now, and what data you're going to have available to you in the future. And that will help you define your objectives and what you want to do with that data. From there, once you've understood what data you have, you need to put that into a hierarchy. And I would include the data that you don't yet have but want, and you can include that in the hierarchy too, and just understand that you don't currently have it. So the TUI example, I just gave you, that was the data that we had. What I did, I put it into a hierarchy. So the most important user data all the way down to the least important user data, okay? And when we first started, we only had preference centers data, geo data, and we had some user data as well. And we built up our program from there. And I'll go into detail about how we did that later in the presentation. But it's very important to understand which are the most important or which are the most valuable areas of user data, which are the most important sources of data, okay? So web search data, web engagement data, our users, it's more frequent, it's more recent, and because of that, it was the most valuable to us. Preference center data, you update your preference center most likely either once and never again, or very rarely, okay? So that data quickly becomes out of date. When they first do it, it's very useful, but as I say, as it becomes out of date, it becomes less useful. As well with preference data, the risk is that they might tell you what they perceive that they want rather than what they actually want. So if you're in the market for a car and I ask you, what cars do you like? You might tell me Ferrari, Jaguar and Aston Martin, but actually your web engagement data might tell me that you're looking for Fiestas under £1,000 or something like that. So you'd probably engage with both. If I sent you a communication with both in, you'd probably engage with the Ferrari content, but you're very unlikely to convert into a purchase. And the same might be, you know, if I ask you what course you're interested in, you might tell me physics, mathematics, things like that, but it might be, and I don't want to disrespect any courses, so I'm not going to compare any and say they're lesser, but if you see what I mean, you might be saying I'm interested in these establishments, but actually your grades are less likely to be as good to get into Oxford, Cambridge. You might be looking at some more realistic options as well. So it's all about what the user's behaviour is telling us rather than what they're actually telling us. Look for quick wins. I'm a massive advocate of quick wins. It's very, very easy to get carried away with looking at very complex strategies, okay? There's always quick wins in there. There's always things that you can roll out straight away as long as you understand where they feed into the overall objectives that you're trying to achieve. So what data is available to you now? Remove all the complexity from that, and what can you implement quickly and cost effectively, okay? Basic retargeting can make a massive impact, okay? So a massive impact to your user if you can welcome them by name, very easy. If you can recognize their previous activity in one of your communications, if you can get any level of personalization on your CRM program, on your website, then you're going to immediately start increasing engagement, okay? And the conversions will shoot up and you will be absolutely amazed. Look to CRM. If you're looking for a starting point for personalization, then CRM, email marketing is, in my honest opinion, the place to start, okay? Why? Because CRM is powered by a database. You have to have some level of data on your user in order to have an email marketing program, okay? And you can build on it. So I've listed 3 ways that email marketing can offer personalization. So you can offer personalized content based on database and preference center data. So if you know their date of birth, the most basic example is you can send them a birthday email on their birthday, okay? As an example, if you know their name, you can put their name into the email. If you know what courses they're interested in, you can add that data in relatively easily. I'm going to move on to the third point and then go back to the second point. Engagement-based follow-ups are relatively easy to implement and will give you a huge return on investment when it comes to conversion and engagement, okay? So if I took a nursery, for example, you could send a nursery email, you could have a range of content within that email. My son currently is in nursery and we're looking to move into nursery, so I'm talking about this constantly with my wife at the minute. But you could send out an email and that email could talk about the menu, it could talk about the toddler room, the baby room, the preschool room, it could talk about activities that they offer, it could talk about outside space, it could talk about the house itself. A broad range of content. What you can then do is tag up each of those links with a simple number. So if they click on the menu, you tag that link as number 1, for example. If they click on toddler room, that's tagged up as number 2. From there, you can understand what they've clicked on, and you can send them an email based on what they've clicked on. So if they've clicked on the menu, you send them an email about the menu, purely about the menu, a couple of days later. You know that they're interested in that, they're going to engage with it, and you'll see massive return on investment there, and it's easy to do. Then you can automate it, then you can build on it, okay? Very easy, very effective. The same goes with universities. You could do that by course, you could do that by facilities. Whatever fits with you, okay, you just need to think about how do I badge it up, how do I label these links individually, and from there you can start to build up a strategy. But click follow-ups, email click follow-ups, are very, very easy to implement, very effective. And then in terms of segmentation, you've got plenty of options in front of you. One way that I like to do it, and one way I like to explain how I do it as well, it can get quite complex, but you look horizontally and vertically at your data, okay? So you look at your engagement data, so what people are interested in, and you can use preference center data, all the data that we spoke about, as to garner interest. And then you look vertically, so basically ranking them from top to bottom, really highly engaged people at the top, unengaged people at the bottom, and you can just send to the really engaged people to get massive engagement rates, okay? So you may choose to email frequently the people that respond frequently more often, and you might choose to only go to the full list, which includes the people that don't often engage. You may choose to only email them once a month or something like that in order to not overmail them and in order to try and re-engage them and move them back up to the top of the pot. So once you've established some semblance of a structure, you know what your objectives are, and you've started to implement some quick wins, it's all about understanding user behavior, and that will differ not just by area, so nursery, university, college. It will differ per university. It will differ per nursery. Okay, all users are different, and you need to understand your user. And I can't give you a blueprint for understanding your user, but you need to understand the data that you have in front of you, and you need to go through it and understand how you can make it work for you. Okay, so the important thing again is to keep things simple. Find an area of focus and conduct analysis. So what I did with TUI, we had a massive website. It was all encompassing. You could do tons of stuff. You could look for cruises, flights, last minute deals, long haul, short haul, all the rest of it. You guys know family holidays, adult holidays. When you're looking for a holiday, there's so much you can do. But it's all about keeping it simple, keeping things simple. So focus purely on the search bar. So what are people typing into the search, okay? We got the data back from that search panel, broke it down into what destination they're looking at, how many nights, where they're flying from and things like that. All of the variables that are in the search box is around 5 or 6, and then from there we were able to build up a program. So for you guys, it might be being able to understand whether you're speaking to a parent, whether you're speaking to a student. Again, whether their interests lie in menus or facilities or what courses they're interested in, all of that data should be available to you somewhere. So it's all about focusing on an area and building a strategy from there. Then you move on to defining your rules. It's all about leveraging that customer behavior, thinking about what objectives you're trying to achieve, and getting the right people in a room and brainstorming the hell out of it, okay? And then from there, you're able to draft a brief. So at TUI, we ended up with personalized content based on recent web search behavior, content personalized on the propensity to book. So we were able to give content, so destination content, for example. We were able to say, this user is interested in Tenerife, therefore we're going to put Tenerife in front of them. We understood their propensity to book, which meant how close to booking a holiday they are, and we'd do that by looking at how many web searches they'd be making in a certain period of time. We'd change the messaging appropriately. Tone of voice and imagery based on the segment. So if they're a family holiday searcher, we'd give them sort of family imagery and family units. If they're an adult or sort of adult relaxation couples holiday, we'd give them content to that. If they're sort of youngsters that are just interested in going out and having a few drinks with their mates, we'd give them content related to that. And then we'd also give them people like you recommendations too. So that's understanding from your users, understanding users that are similar to users that interact with, I don't know, GCSE maths, also go on to look at GCSE English, GCSE science, or, you know, what are users with similar behaviour patterns going on to do within your environment, whether that's email or web. So basically, at TUI, we built a multi-staged email approach and reflected that on the website too, that looks at research stage, planning stage, and booking stage for your holiday. As you work through your holiday journey, so to speak, the communications would ramp up and become more sales focused as you moved along. Slightly more relevant example to this audience. So at the student room, currently, we're building something called My TSR. And the previous presentation looked at YouTube, again, how it sort of, how the content was very, very much minimalist, okay? But what he didn't go into was the personalisation within that minimal content, okay? So it's stripping out all the stuff that's not relevant to you and putting in front of your users content that's relevant, okay? So that's what we're trying to achieve at TSR at the moment. So we're looking at replacing the homepage with a personalised hub, content totally targeted at you. So student room, we have a challenge whereby we attract users from GCSE age to A-level age to university age to graduation, okay? And we have a one-size-fits-all website, so the vast majority of the content that a user hits when they land on the website is not going to be relevant to them. So our challenge is putting in front of them, those users, the most relevant content, okay? So a university student is not going to be interested in GCSE content. So it's all about understanding which segments they fall into and putting the right content in front of them. So understanding they're a GCSE user, therefore they only see GCSE content, or they're a university user, therefore they only see university content. Then we mix it up, so we give them a mixture of education, social, and advertorial content. So because we're a learning resources website and we're also a forums website, and we make our money from advertising, essentially, we need to make sure that we have a mix of everything, and we need to make sure that it's as engaging as possible. So the education content, some users will be more interested in educational content, and some users will be more interested in social content. So it's about understanding user behaviour, what they've been interacting with, and putting the right content in front of them. So if a user's been interacting with relationships content, mainly on the forums, then we'll put that type of content in front of them. If a user's been using our study help calendar, study planner, university choice tool, then we will put all of that content in front of them. Okay, so it's about understanding what content the user's interested in, what the content the user's been looking into, and similar users to them, and putting that content in front of them and removing everything that isn't relevant to them. It's always learning, always updating. So it's about understanding that data is always going to refresh, and it's not just putting the same thing in front of them all the time. So once they interact with a certain part of the website, they move on, they go on to engage. It's about using that engagement data and bringing it back into the loop and feeding it into the MyTSR homepage, feeding it into the email database, feeding it into the app, and generally just building that single customer view, okay, which will enable more one-to-one personalised communications. Ours is powered by Crux, as I said, which is our data management platform. Data management platform is incredibly useful. It allows us to tag up each page. So if we have an article page, we can put tag on it, for example, GCSE English. They will know that they've been looking at an article which includes GCSE English content in there. Then they go into a segment, GCSE English segment, and we can retarget information based on that. And our objectives there, increase engagement, increase time on site, and increase repeat visits, okay? And we can do all of that, and we'll see a massive increase in all of those stats by putting the right content in front of them and reducing the stress of the user having to try and find the content in just a massive blob of irrelevant content. You know, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. So it's removing all of the hay and just as soon as they land on the website, just giving them the needle and saying, look, here's the content that you're interested in, and allowing them to have a nice organic journey across your website, across your CRM platform. So in summary, define your objectives, create a data hierarchy, look for the quick wins, analyze and understand your user behavior, define your rules, launch, analyze, and refine. And I'll stick around for questions at the end. Hopefully that was useful to you. Personalisation can be as shallow or as deep as you want it to be. It seems really daunting to start with, but once you get stuck in, once you start making those quick wins, then you will see massive spikes in user engagement. And I guarantee that you will see massive, if you get it right, you will see huge, huge spikes in user engagement, and it'll be well worth your while. Thank you very much.